Hey everybody, I'm Sean Hammond with PremierGuitar.com. We're at the Yamaha booth with Julian. He's showing us two cool new amps, the THR 5 and THR 10. Julian, what's the story with these?
Our idea behind THR is to make basically the perfect amp for everything that you're doing not on stage. There's a ton of amps out there that work brilliantly when you're playing a show or you're in a studio, you're in a rehearsal or a club, but for what you want to do when you're playing at home or you're not on stage, nothing really works well. So we decided to strip everything back and make an amp that just really fits in for that.
So how did you decide, where to stop and where to, there's a lot of things you could have included and a lot of things you did include, so what were sort of the criteria?
Well, basically we stopped and we looked at what guitarists really want from an amp. So of course it's got a sound killer. You need to get that kind of feel and that vibe and the tone that you get from a cranked amp, but quiet. So one of the killer things for us was great tone but at low volume. Plus it needs to look like it's going to fit in with where you're going to use it at home, so not being a big black kind of vinyl covered box. Kind of being compact, fitting in physically where you're going to play it, plus having real good stereo playback capability. So if you want to play backing tracks through it or play some kind of track through it, because a lot of people now sit and play with YouTube or iTunes or some kind of backing track content. So it's got to sound great guitar amp, great stereo playback, fit in really well, and actually it fits in as part of your recording setup as well. So we just stopped, we talked to guitarists, said, well, how do you play at home? And basically made an amp to fit in how people are actually playing when they're not on stage.
Cool, well let's run through the features, starting with what's behind the grill.
Behind the grill, basically you've got a custom-made kind of hi-fi full-range speaker enclosure. So there's a pair of full-range, like 3.5-inch speakers in there that will reproduce a full range hi-fi frequency. So on the guitar side, it sounds like a guitar combo, but you play a track back through this thing, it sounds like a high-end iPod dock. And no matter how much gain you got on your guitar, the hi-fi sound isn't compromised. So we've custom built this enclosure so it sounds perfect where you're using it, and it's not built to project to a huge number of people. It's built and designed so that when you sit it in front of you on your desk or on your coffee table, it sounds great for you and you're getting a really nice, high quality, natural kind of sound from it.
Okay, now can we just walk left to right across the front panel, the top panel?
Sure, what you have on here, basically we have the amp type control here. We've got 5 different modeled amp types, a crunch, clean, lead, British high gain, and modern. So running through basically the kind of 5 killer classic tube amp tones. Independent gain and master control. Now the interesting thing about this is this amp actually uses our own proprietary VCM modeling technology. So VCM stands for virtual circuitry modeling. So most model amps they model the tone of an amp. So they kind of take the EQ curve and overlay that on their own sound. We actually have our own patented technology that models the internal electronic circuitry of an amp. So this thing actually responds like a tube amp. And that means when you turn the master up, it doesn't just get louder, it distorts a little more, the tone changes, the compression changes. So all of these controls are full VCM modeling control. So we have gain, master, bass, middle, and treble. And again, the EQ changes, the way it responds changes depending on the amp that you're using. So if you're using like a British kind of crunch tone, it's totally different to an American modern high gain amp because a real amp would respond very, very differently. Then you've got a couple of effects processors on there, again using Yamaha kind of studio effects technology. We've got one time-based effects processor with reverbs and delays and those kind of things. And then you've got a modulation processor, chorus, flanger, phaser, tremolo, the usual stuff. Guitar master output, and then also a USB and auxiliary input, because we can plug iPod, iPhone, MP3 player, CD player, or even if it's got USB on the back, and you can use this as a USB sound monitor for your PC or your Mac.
Now, let's go back to the guitar master knob. Can you explain the concept of that a little more?
Yeah, basically these are like the VCM amp controls. So this is the gain and the master volume you would have on the amp. This is literally like the power amp volume for like the high.
It's like a master volume for the whole amp.
Yeah, and what that means is that I can turn this right down, but I can crank up the kind of modeled master, so I can get the I'm basically getting power amp distortion without actually having to have it too loud.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, were the 5 models based on any particular amps or rough?
We did base them on some classic amps. We changed them a little bit because we wanted to make a killer sounding amp. Basically what you've got in there, you've got things like a Fender Twin Reverb, an AC30, a Marshall JMP, a JCM 800, and like a Boogie Jaw rectifier.
Okay. Can we hear a few of those or all of them?
Sure. So starting off with the clean sound. So this is kind of our sort of Fendery twin reverby sound.
And yet, it's based on the twin, and yet you've got that gain knob, which allows you to add a little more grit to it than you would be able to get with a twin. I know because I've tried cranking a twin before and blown it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, rather than having some kind of crazy, super faithful thing, what we're trying to do is make an amp that you want to play, that gives you sounds and gives you usable things you want to play. And using that VCM technology, we can add things that maybe you don't have on the real amp to get that control. But one of the nice things you have, I mean, this is kind of quiet, but you still have that. You have that kind of breakup, and if I crank the gain and the master right up, I think you can hear the low ends kind of breaking up a little bit there. You've got that sort of breakup, that distortion that actually is really natural. And even when you're using that at a real low level, so you're playing at home, it's late at night, you've got that kind of feel and that vibe.
Well, it feels realistic. Yeah, it sounds realistic.
But it's modeled. I mean, this is a completely digital amp, but it has that. Has the harmonic content, it has the vibe and the feel and the feedback.
It does sound fantastic. All right, next after clean?
Then moving on, after clean is crunch. So this is like our kind of AC30 sort of. It's real bright sounding. And actually this is a great example of the VCM, like power tube compression that you get from this. So if I crank the gain up and have the master on like half, we get. So you've got the kind of power tube, preamp tube distortion there, so it's getting kind of dirty. But if I switch that around and take the gain right down but crank the master, it's going to get louder, but we're going to get. And it's that harmonic content that's in there. When you play a big open chord, it's like. You've got that, just that certain something that you get from a cranked amp. So it makes it much more inspiring to play. It's something that you actually want to sit and play. So that's the crunch tone. Then moving on to the lead, we have like a kind of Marshall Plexi sort of tone. This is personally my favorite tone. So you've got that kind of, and one of the guys when we were recording some demo videos for this said it's like a real vintage amp and you wish it had a little more gain. And it kind of has that. I mean, if I crank the gain all the way up, it's. It's starting to sound really nice and saturated, but you know, if you crank like an old British Plexi or an old tube amp, that's what you're getting, and obviously that's why people then were adding distortion pedals on the front, because it's not super gainy, it's not really saturated, but it has that, again, it has that natural vibe, that natural feel. And when you roll the volume back a little on your guitar, so if we go from everything on full, which is, if I roll the volume back a little bit, it cleans up.
We've only gotten through 3 sounds, and it just seems like, I don't know, sort of a guitarist dream boombox, you know?
And you know, the funny thing is, it kind of is. It's in this setting, it's really difficult because, like I said before, it's not designed to project in a massive room. But when you, this was designed to sit on your coffee table, your bookshelf, your desk, and when you have it in that situation, it's just perfect. I mean, I've got a bunch of big tube amps at home, but I can't use them in the house. They just stay in their cases, because what am I going to do? Freak out my neighbours and crank up my 100-watt tube amp? It just doesn't happen. But this sits next to my computer monitor, and I can plug in and play and get all of those things that inspire me from a really nice sounding cranked amp, but in an actual way that I want to use it at home.
You mentioned having it next to your computer monitor, and I know I want to get to the other two amp models too, but it brought up a very non-guitar-y question. Is it like shielded to protect it from noise, say from your display or your computer or anything?
Yeah, it's shielded. It's magnetically shielded, so it's not gonna pull your display out of alignment. It's not noisy, so it fits in perfectly. I mean, it has auxiliary input either over 1/8" stereo jack or via USB. You just plug it in and it works. I mean, my personal one I just use as my PC speakers at home. So all of my sounds come through this. So if I'm listening to a YouTube video or listening to something on iTunes, just everything's coming through THR. And actually, because the enclosure was designed and built by Yamaha Hi-Fi, with us from the guitar division, it sounds like a hi-fi product. So tons of guitar amps now have some way to play back, either over USB or an auxiliary in, but it sounds like playing your iPod through a guitar amp, which is not a happy place to be. It sounds like a guitar amp, and it sounds like a killer iPod dock.
Cool. Well, let's hear the other two models, and then you were going to jam along to some accompanying tracks, I think, right?
So the next two models is where it gets a little bit more gainy. So we have like a British high gain, kind of maybe a JCM 800 kind of a high gain, lots of saturation. So you've got that. Again, it's smooth, it's rich, it's warm. I mean, the funny thing about it, to be honest, is the high gain stuff with modeling is relatively easy to do. It's that low gain stuff that's much harder, but we still have really, really nice sounding smooth. Nice, kind of really playable, really usable high gain sounds. And then on the very top of the gain setting, you've got like a kind of rectifier, California, super high gain modern amp. So this is, and the funny thing about this is, I mean, my personal amp is I'm not a metal player at all. I play blues and country, but I use a really high gain amp, but with all the gain turned down. And the funny thing about this is it responds like those amps do, which is if you turn everything up, actually it's a little bit out of control. There's so much gain in there, there's so much kind of power tube compression with everything cranked, you know. You know, you've got that sort of super high gain, saturated tone in there. But if you turn everything down a little bit, and as I say, speaking from genuine experience, if I wind the gain down a little on this kind of amp, actually you get a really nice, usable.
One word that keeps coming to mind as you describe this is just fun, and not fun in like the derogatory or like sort of demeaning. Oh, that's a fun little thing, but just like, damn, that sounds like fun to have, but also really useful, like practicals.
Totally, and this is exactly what we were looking for, because there's a ton of really cool amps out there, but we wanted to do something different. I mean, if you're playing on stage, whatever amp you want is out there, whether you want a super vintage low gain amp or ultra high gain. The world is full of amazing choices. We kind of don't want to mess with that. And if you want a slightly smaller amp, you know, maybe some club gigs or for recording or to use in rehearsals, you can get that too. And actually, even the big trend that there is now for this sort of lunchbox amps, maybe 3-watt or 5-watt tube combos, incredible amps, but they're just hard to deal with at home. You crank a 5-watt tube amp at home, that's going to be loud, and it's kind of hard to get into. It's hard to really get the inspiration from. But because we built in the sounds of those big amps, but into something genuinely that you can play at low level and get the feedback. I mean, it's difficult to show it on a video demonstration, but the way it feels when you play it is like playing that big amp through a set of studio monitors. You're exactly right. It makes it fun. I honestly, I play guitar so much more at home since I got one of these, because it just sits on my desk. So I just pick up a guitar, do a little jamming. It makes me want to play at home. And before, like I said, I never got my amps out of their flight cases because it just, I get complaints from the neighbors. It freaks everyone out.
Well, let's hear, you wanted to play something for us and jam along with it? I
mean, one of the great things about this as well, of course, because it has that hi-fi full range sound, is that we can get, if we're going to play a backing track through it, it sounds really natural and really hi-fi. And one of the really, really useful things is that having your guitar tone and the track coming from the same speakers just makes it far easier to get into. If you're jamming at home and you've got your track coming from up in sort of in front of you on your desk, but your guitar's down on the floor, it just never mixes in very well. So here we've got everything coming from the same place and really, really nice sound quality. So we've got a nice kind of full range hi-fi tone. I'll just dial in like a kind of low gain lead sound. That real, genuinely kind of high quality playback. I mean, if I just play a track back through it, you get an idea of the audio quality of this thing, because it's not just a guitar amp. You play back your iTunes or your YouTube playback through it, or your iPod, it sounds like a little dog. We've still got really nice, open, natural sounding. And really easy to dial in the mix, really easy to get everything balanced and working right.
In all my years, jamming by the stereo as a kid or whatever, I'd never thought about that, how it might make a difference. It does sound better when it's coming from the same thing. It's like, whoa, it feels like you're on that track or something.
Yeah, and because of the way that we've built this thing, which is kind of the sounds that you're hearing, it sounds like the amp mic'd in through a set of studio monitors is the best way I can describe it. So actually, it's really difficult to do, but if you take a real high-power, serious tube amp, mic it, and somehow figure out a way to play it back through this, basically it sounds the same as the models. Again, speaking from experience, I have some of these amps. I've used them. We have them in our labs where we developed this in Japan, and I know that's how that amp would sound through these speakers if I mic'd it. So it doesn't have any weird kind of -1 technology or anything like that, but just dialing in the tones, it coming from the same place means that your guitar fits into that track really, really smoothly.
So when will these be shipping in the US?
They're going to be shipping in the first quarter of 2012, so we're thinking maybe late February, early March.
Okay, and what are the prices? And well, I guess I should ask, are there any differences between the THR5 and the THR10 besides, is it just wattage or?
There's a couple of differences, and actually the wattage isn't one of them. I mean, what we have in there is you've got that stereo playback, you've got the guitar amp capability. This is also a killer recording interface, because one of the things that we found that people want to do at home is just a little bit of recording, just getting something down, getting an idea down, without spending too much time diving into a load of gear. So it ships with Cubase AI6 in the box, and using the USB 2 interface, it just works as a USB input. So you don't have to use Cubase, you can use Logic or Pro Tools or anything that will support an external USB interface will work with this. And because the monitoring's done in here and because all the processing's done in here, there's no latency, there's no system overhead, there's way less chance of dropouts. And it's not plug-in based, so everything's just on the top panel. So you dial in your sound, basically hit record on whatever software you're using, and you're recording. And it'll record 4 tracks at once, so you get a stereo pair with all the speaker simulators and the effects and the amps, and you get a stereo clean DI track at exactly the same time. So, you know, phase perfect, timing perfect. So if you want to, you can reamp that later, put it through another amp or another plug-in or something else, all running simultaneously. So it's the guitar amp, it's the recording interface, it's the stereo playback. Comes with.
Can I ask, before you go to the THR5, the Cubase is Mac and PC compatible?
Mac and PC compatible, yeah. I personally run Mac, it works fine, but we've tested it and everything works on PC as well. So yeah, totally compatible, and all the drivers are Mac or USB compatible, so whatever you're running, it'll load straight up.
Okay, cool. And then you were going to THR5.
Yeah, they both have that core functionality of the guitar amp sounds and the stereo playback and the USB and the Cubase functionality. Really what changes between the 5 and the 10 is they both have those 5 guitar amp models that we played through. The 10 also has an electroacoustic preset and a bass preset and a flat response. So if you wanted to play a synth or a drum machine or something through it, you can do that. The 5 doesn't have that. The 10 has a 3-band EQ. The 5 has a single kind of morphing tone control. And it's kind of just a slightly smaller enclosure, so the power's the same, but because
the speakers, are they the same speakers?
Speakers are the same speakers, but because it's a smaller box, you get a little less low frequency response, a little less overall volume, a slightly narrower stereo image. But both of them have something called extended stereo technology, which is a new process we've developed just for this to make it sound super wide. Again, you're not going to pick it up in a place like this, but stand it on your desk. The reverbs, we've got those Yamaha SPX Studio reverbs, really sound killer. It's a real 3D kind of space that you
hear it even in this huge room we're in that's echoing and has lots of background noise, but I can still hear it a little. It sounds great.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing, because throughout the entire development process, we were always keeping that thing of actually what are people going to use this for? Because of course at times we got a little sidetracked and we started trying to make it too loud and thinking it needs to go really loud. It doesn't need to go really loud. It needs to sit on your desk, sit on your coffee table, sit on your bookshelf, and just sound killer. So we were always keeping that in mind, and you know, we've come up with something that really does something different. It genuinely is a new kind of guitar amp.
Do you guys have a price point for the US at this point?
Yeah, we do. The big one, the THR10 is going to be $299 MAP. The THR5 is going to be $199.
Okay, cool.
You've got all that stuff at the price of a decent stomp box.
That's way cool. Where can people go to find out more about it?
They should go to yamaha.com/THR, when we've got on there a load of demos and videos and tutorials, and that links you through to all kinds of online content that we've developed. We're just about to go live with a video of a US guitar producer who's done a ton of stuff with like Adam Levine and Blackstone Cherry, a guy called Mark Van Gool. And he did a little demo for us of like a 90-second track only using THR for all his guitar sounds. So it's really cool to hear it for acoustic and bass. It's a killer sounding thing. So yamaha.com/THR has all the information on this.
Awesome. Thanks, Julian. Have a great show. All right. I'm Sean Hammond. Thanks for watching PremierGuitar.com.